it starts to get really sticky for some people around 5, 6, 7 employees because we have span of control, right? So once you get upwards of 5, 6, 7, you very quickly experience your own leadership gap. Like, I don't know how to then effectively manage and lead a team this big.
You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side, break on through to the other side.
God bless America. Welcome to the Ranch, everybody. The podcast explores the people and happenings of Dry Creek Ranch, Eagle, and the greater Boise area. My guest today is a business and performance coach. She works with entrepreneurs of all sizes and is really into leveraging leadership skills, understanding what's stopping somebody from being an effective leader, uncovering the problems that they're experiencing in their business, and really getting to the root of what's actually going on to stop a business from growing or, in fact, making it shrink. As an entrepreneur myself, I greatly appreciated her insights. We talked extensively about different tools that she has and even worked through some of those things with my own personal experience in business in real time. It was fantastic. She has one-on-one coaching available as well as courses. I highly recommend you reach out to her and see what she has to say if you're feeling stuck or just limited in your own entrepreneurial journey. But without further ado, the woman, the myth, the legend, Lisa Desilet. Don't answer that question. But anyway, how are you?
I'm really good. Good. I'm excited to be here today.
I'm so pumped that you were able to make it. When we met at the networking event, and you talked about the coaching you were doing and the value you bring to people at all levels of businesses, frankly, like the small and the large, I instantly was like, I got to talk to this woman because I've owned several businesses, okay? Education companies, real estate companies, content companies, all kinds of things. And there's a classic set of problems that I think that every low-level entrepreneur runs into, right? And that's essentially like your time crunch, right? Like your burn rate with your time, no matter what, you just can't get past it if you really want to become an actual business owner. My struggle through business is that I have always refused to take the step where I'm like, all right, I got to get employees. I got to become a team leader. And I have always gone for greater efficiency. But I know that's to my detriment as a business owner and an entrepreneur because, you know, the old adage, you don't own a business, you own a job. And I like the things I do. But I think this is a lot of entrepreneurs.
100%.
Right? And it's not like I make a conscious decision. I think a lot of people want to go to the next level, but just lack the understanding and mechanisms and just training to actually go there. Is that something that you see a lot of, like people that are trying to grow, that have a viable business model, they have a viable plan, and they just lack the coaching and the experience to actually take that next step?
You said something in that you made a conscious decision to know that one of your challenges that wasn't worth, like the juice wasn't worth the squeeze on it for you, is that you didn't want to have team members. And I'm curious, I won't ask the question now, but I would love to get into it.
It doesn't matter. We can talk about whatever. Yeah.
What is your justification for that? When you're like, no, I just want to be the person that's doing the business and also that's in charge of the business and not have to worry about anyone else.
Sure.
What's your challenge in that? Or why did you make that conscious decision? Okay,
so if I were a dentist, I couldn't be doing the dental work and watching the front desk. Okay, like if I'm an electrician, it's exceedingly difficult for me to have, wire in my mouth, screwing on wire nuts, doing all kinds of things, and be scheduling or fielding customer service, right? For my first tutoring job, what I had was the college entrance prep. All right, so I would help students. I would initially go to people's houses, a little button-up shirt, and drive there with my Prius or something, right? Get there and sit at the kitchen table, work with a student 90 minutes, and then drive to my next appointment. So I was interfacing with my customers right away. I was able to field any quality concern questions or customer care questions in that moment. So I didn't have a real need for, once I acquired a client, I didn't have a real need for a lot of interfacing outside of that. I would also handle all billing there. So everything was one stop. Like I'd talk to the parent, I'd talk to the kid, I'd deliver the service, the product was good, I'd get the money for it, and then I would leave. Now you can only do that 4 o'clock on or 2 o'clock on because you can only do it when kids aren't in school. So I also had the entire time beforehand to field additional calls. So if somebody called at 3 o'clock and wanted to know about my tutoring program and sign up, I had time to do that. I didn't need like, a Susan or something picking up the phone and fielding those calls. I structured my business in a way that I had the capacity to hit all of the different marks along the way. As I grew in that business and I ran into the time crunch, which everyone does, I kind of fought it for a little while, but then I eventually just expanded from instead of one-on-one prep to a classroom. Right. So now instead of one kid and making, let's say $100 an hour, I was doing 5 or 6 kids and making $500 or $600 an hour. I was also, again, dealing with all of because I had been in it so long, I was able to create systems for myself and deal with all the customer concerns. So even though I was dealing with 5 or 6 times the number of people, I was able to keep the quality high and keep the communication high. So for that business, because I was able to make a really good living and keep it all in-house, so I knew there was zero question or worry about what somebody else was doing, I consciously decided I'm going to stay small. Because the margin once you start an education center really gets ground down. I had a buddy who owns, I think it's about 20 different centers throughout the Bay Area, built them from the ground up in about 20 years. His margins were so insane. He said, look, for every $1 we come in for SAT prep, we make 30 cents, or excuse me, 3 cents.
Okay.
So it was like his margins were great. So his whole play was after we paid the rent, after we paid the centers, after we paid the managers, after we paid the tutors, all of these things, he's like, we make about 3 cents for every $1. He's like, for SAT prep. For general prep, if he was tutoring kids in like math, he would lose 1.5 cents.
Ooh.
Right. So he's
Gotcha.
like, we're trying to iron that out. So those were the types of problems he was encountering, and he needed volume. I recognize that in downturns, your volume drops. So if you're making 3 cents, it's gonna go kaplooey if it's if you run into a downturn in the economy and people stop coming in. So I was like, listen, I'm gonna stay small. My margins will stay 100% because I'm the one doing it. The only expense I have is gas or my piddly rent that I was paying when I had my class. And I was able to keep the quality high and ward off any concerns of losing the business in a downturn. But again, that kept me as somebody who had a job, not a business. Does that give
totally
you a bigger
does.
picture?
Yes. And what I hear you say in that is really coming back to that identifier. Right. You made a conscious decision. You evaluated other business models that were similar in terms of the industry that you were in. And you saw the information, the metrics, the data, and you made a data-informed decision. And I would say that is where most entrepreneurs get tripped up, is they're not making data-informed decisions. They're just chasing what outsiders are telling them they should do in their business. And we know all that feeling, like we shit on ourselves all the time. Right. We let other people shit on us all the time. And instead of really being able to take a step back and use discernment and intentionally make decisions about your business, that's really where leadership starts, is that intentionality that someone brings into business, as opposed to, hey, I'm a esthetician. Maybe instead of just being an esthetician, I should open a clinic. Oh, maybe I should open multiple clinics because more is better, right? And they never take the time to actually pause and ask really good questions if more is what they're actually after. Gotcha.
And more is that's a difficult, more what?
Exactly.
Right? Are you after more money? Are you after more time? Are you after more? Obviously, the more you leverage up, right? So say somebody doesn't actually make more money opening the first, second, third, fourth, fifth clinic. If then they're like, all right, this is my volume, I'm going to increase the cost here by like 1 or 2 or 3%. At the end of that rainbow is like this huge increase in actual revenue, right? Because they leveraged it. But more initially, it's like, well, more what? Like, what's the plan here? Is it to get to 5 and then increase your rate by 10% and like have all this cream off the top, or are you just responding to the market demands? And then once you're responding to the market demands, you're no longer in charge of your company. The market's in charge of your company.
I think there's another question underneath that. And you touched on it a little bit when you said more what. What I find with business owners, and this happens at scale. It happens with small, like it's just me and a team of 1 or 2, or it's me and now I've got a team of 20, 30. Without what I call value alignment, meaning I know exactly what's important to me so that I can answer that question. What more am I after? Am I after more time freedom? Am I after more financial freedom? And what is the value, my personal value? Where is the evidence of that in what I'm pursuing? They're chasing something that actually won't end up be fulfilling. So yeah, they might have more revenue at the end of the day, or, over the course of opening 5, 6, 7 clinics, there's, more profit at the end. But because they've gotten so detached from their values as an individual, why they even wanted to get into this type of business, what impact they wanted to make, how they wanted to be of service to people. What I'm seeing a lot, and a lot of the conversations that are coming up with business owners that I'm having, is they're riding this line of burnout now. Like, okay, I've got more money. Maybe I have more time. I've got more team. I got a lot more problems. And all of this is requiring more of me that I don't want to give. And so now I've built a business that I actually don't even enjoy anymore. And I kind of don't even care how much money that it's making, because I'm miserable inside it.
You right when you were saying this, when you started this, you're talking about value alignment. Mm-hmm. Okay. Value alignment, I think for a lot of people, especially the smaller business owners, it's one of those things where, like when I started tutoring, I knew that I really liked tutoring, but I didn't have like these core values, right? Mm-hmm. So, and again, eventually I did decide like, okay, look, just stay small. I don't want to have to go whatever, for whatever reason. And it might've been the wrong reason. I have no idea. Maybe I could have crushed it, but I didn't. But when you talk about value alignment, it seems to me that you're talking about values and value alignment as the individual business owner using the business to at least validate or express their personal values within a workspace, right? Where it's kind of like you're burnt out, you have more money, you have more of this, but the business is not reflecting your core values. And so therefore you don't really like the business anymore. Am I accurate with that?
Totally. And people often mistake like, oh, but like my business has values. Yeah. Right. Most people buy businesses they build businesses because of, they're like, okay, I want to make an impact. And so they've got really great, like our mission statement and our vision statement, our values. But the challenge that I find with most people is that when they don't see a place, and there's a lot of research around this with burnout specifically, when they've built a business that they've never actually docked into themselves of like, where do my personal values live inside this? For example, you decided to stay small for whatever reason, but I imagine that there were elements about you as a human, you as an individual. It's like, maybe I see what would be required in order for me to go bigger or to expand my team or have multiple locations. And the cost is actually not worth it to me because, maybe I have a family that I'm growing and time with them is really important and I don't want to miss out on that. So while I could chase this value that someone else might deem as important, it's actually not important to me. And that's really the key difference here is we make judgments and we make assumptions around everyone around us, not actually acknowledging that people have different values. So when we, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, are putting our stake in the ground, making our place known in the world and flexing our influence, we have to know what our core values are in order to stay solid in the context of all the tumultuous. Can I cuss here?
Oh, you can say whatever the fuck you want.
Perfect. All the tumultuous shit that comes with being a business owner. And so I think about it like the way that you build a rocket ship. Okay. So your rocket ship it has to have 3 really important things. It's got to have a flight plan. It's got to have quality control. And it also has to have liftoff. The liftoff are all of the things that you're doing to get your business up and going. When I work with clients, it's getting really solid on what those habits are. So great, you've got all of this liftoff. If you don't have a launch plan, like where the hell are you going? Once you get that liftoff, that rocket ship might literally be going to Mars. And you're like, I thought we were going to Saturn. How the hell did we end up here? Or now we're just stuck in like the orbit of this other thing. And then the last piece that I think often gets overlooked is the quality control. And that really is shoring up your values. If you don't have your values clearly identified, and not just identified of like, my value is, connection or contribution. What the hell does that even mean? What's the evidence of that? Because
my value is contribution. I gave something.
Right?
That's me.
And I'm not going to judge somebody who chooses that value or any value that they choose. Really, the key is being incredibly explicit of, okay, if that's your value, how do you define it? What does that even look like? And where is the evidence of that in your life? Because when we're choosing values, we choose aspirational values for our business. Like, I want it to be this thing. And when we talk about our personal values, it's about like present state. Who the hell am I right now? If I say my value is, I'll use family, and this might confront some people, I don't know. Let's say your value is family. And you decide that, the value of family looks like spending time with your kids, feeling really connected, going on date nights with your spouse, and just feeling really solid at home. Yet you're at work before your kids even get up. You're constantly on your phone when you're at, their sporting events, or your family dinner is interrupted by, oh yeah, I got to go send this email. What you say your value is and the reality of who you are totally incongruent. And so it's a bit of a reality check that like maybe you built this business off of aspirational values that you wanted to contribute to the world, but you didn't actually build any of the systems, any of the habits, any of the goals around supporting the values that you actually hold true to yourself. Right. I kind of went off on a tangent there.
Listen, I'm taken by this because you're 100. This was my growth through tutoring, right? So the reason I really stuck with tutoring is because my wife and I had a lot of time together, right? She was a tutor when she was working before we had a few kids. And so we would both have, from the moment we woke up until about 3:30, hanging out with each other. And it was like we spent a lot of time together. And we had, frankly, nobody else is off work at Tuesday at noon, right? Like it's really just us kind of hanging, and we enjoy each other's company. So we had a great time. We'd go like play racquetball, like old people stuff, right? Like, just hang out and go to coffee shops. But as the business grew and I got more clients, I was still able to say, okay, look, our kids are young now, right? And we always knew this was going to be a problem. Our kids are young now. When you have a baby that goes to bed at like 7 or something, if I can be home from the second that kid wakes up at like 5 or 6 all the way until 3:30 or even 4, then the kid almost doesn't know a life without me. And my wife is there, and I'm still able to go and make enough money for us to continue living the life we were living. But as I grew into a classroom and my client list went from, X to 6X, it became, okay, look, why were you sticking with tutoring, right? It was because you had time with your wife and your family. Okay. And what were your values associated with that? Like you're saying. And then I had to scramble to develop business systems on the fly because the client list went from like X to 3X almost overnight. And it was like, oh my God. Right. And as I developed a classroom, I wasn't interfacing with the parents anymore directly. So they never even met me. So I wasn't answering questions every single session. I wasn't helping them see the value add to their life every single time I showed up because there was a presentation aspect of it. And there was an interaction with the kid that the parents always heard. They would come to me privately after, say, like a one-on-one session. They're like, man, you're really good with my kid. I really appreciate this. No problem. They no longer saw that. So I had to develop business systems to continue the networking and communication with the parents and keeping everyone happy in a remote style setting. And again, all of this came crashing down. It was like, no, but now you're doing this with 3 kids. So it's not that you have an infant, you have 3 kids. And by the way, your oldest kids are now going to school. So you don't even get to see them in the initial time of the day when you thought you would have off. So it was morphing the business to more accurately reflect my values that I had at the beginning of the business, and it was building systems along the way that allowed me to continue doing that. But it was this massive scramble, and I thank my lucky stars I was able to do it, because at one point I was like, oh, I don't know if I can keep this up. Like, this is crazy. Like, I don't know how to connect with this person. This person's upset. This person doesn't even know me. This kid is like and it's like, again, systems. Had to develop the systems. How do you help people develop systems like that?
Well, first, it starts by asking better questions, right? Because people are so quick to throw money at a solution that they think is going to fix the problem. And really, sometimes we get stuck in this between a rock and a hard place, that we've thrown money at a solution that actually isn't solving the real problem. We're treating the symptom and not the root cause. So it's asking better questions and doing some digging behind the scenes to see, when an entrepreneur invites me into their business and I get to go behind the curtain and more often than not see a little bit of a shit show that's happening there. It reveals symptoms, but the same way that a doctor would sit across from a patient and ask questions about, tell me about what you're feeling, what's going on, all of those different things. They're putting the pieces together to figure out, oh, I think this is what's going on, and to discover the root cause. Now, yes, we need to fix the symptoms. We need to get relief. And a lot of it is simple. I think systems problems are much easier to solve than leadership problems. So systems require maybe a better interface, a little bit of an investment in software, or taking the time to actually map out a process of what a client experience would be. Where are you docking in? What type of communication are you sending? So we can fix systems things because they're not personal. That's probably the best way to phrase it. Right. They're outside of us. So if I send this email at this time, it will give this communication. If I automate this billing after this encounter, then it'll set me up so I'm not chasing payments. Awesome. Those are great things. Where things get a little tricky is once you implement those systems and you see, oh, this is actually not having as big of an impact that we thought. Let's talk about the ways in which you're communicating. Let's talk about how you're pursuing money. Maybe you're delaying it because you feel really bad about asking for this, this invoice to be paid, because you're questioning your own worth here. And you're wondering if the service that you're delivering is actually worth what you're charging. So while the systems can be in place and we can set the automations and we can have the framework, that's great. But really, I kind of think about, I have so many analogies, so I apologize. It's almost like a river, right? So we're moving rocks out of the river so that the river can move more freely. But we're downstream and we have to go upstream a little bit and see, like, where's all the shit getting poured into the river that's causing all of this backlog down here? Oh, that's you. You keep throwing all of this shit in the river. You're preventing, quality relationships with the parents because maybe there's some, self-concept things, or you don't know how to address conflict in a healthy way that's actually productive, or you don't know how to delegate or ask for what you need. There's lots of leadership skills that put a lot of rocks in the river that impact the systems that you put in place.
Right. If somebody's throwing giant log rounds into the river is going to keep getting dammed and obstructed. Yeah. I mean, just they're 100% appreciate what you're saying with this, because like I could deal with a student in class and then an angry parent, or whatever it is, and I didn't have many angry or problem-oriented individuals, but almost without fail, when I did, I started peeling back the problems with people. So it's like this kid would not get the homework done, or the kid would lie about it, and I could always catch. Like, if you cheated, I see right. Like, the classic example would be somebody does a reading comprehension section, and these were out of large testing books, and they had the answers in the back. I'm like, listen, there are the answers, but you're trying to go to college, right? So like, don't cheat. This is literally just to help you get better. So like, just do the homework. So inevitably somebody would come in and out of like 40 questions, they'd only miss 2. They'd be like, you did really well here, Lisa. Like, that's great. And you're like, yeah, thanks. Whatever. I'm like, this is great. When did you get this done? I don't know. Last night. I'm like, you did this last night. Like, what time? They're like, I don't know, 8 o'clock last night. I'm like, you did this at 8 o'clock last night. That's awesome. There were 4 sections here, right? Like 4 reading passages. And you're like, yeah, 4. That's what I did last night at 8 o'clock. I'm like, awesome. What were they about? And instantly, like the kid just goes white, right? And 9 times out of 10, if it was a guy, he'd be like, fuck, you got me. I'm like, fucking guy, like, come on, right? Give him a hard time. But girls they always had the infinite capacity to just take it, offend. Like, are you calling me a liar? Like, are you, and they start crying, and then you're like, shit, you got me. Like, because if you start crying in class, there are other kids, probably some of your friends, and now there's like, oh, Lisa started crying.
Shame factor.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so they're crying, they're not admitting it, they're upset, they're offended. They go home, of course, get the parents involved. The parents are like, hey, she really had a bad class. I'm like, I understand that, like, let me tell you what happened. And inevitably, if the parent came back and defended the kid again, I started realizing, I'm like, hey, look, this is not about me. This is a conversation that you've probably had 30 or 40 times over in the last year with teachers. You're blaming me. You think your kid absolutely can't do any wrong. So like, no matter what I do to move the logs out of the river, there's going to be more coming down, right? Because your kid's going to keep screwing up. Your kid's going to keep cheating. I'm going to keep calling it out. You're going to have a problem with it. This has nothing to do with me. I just have to get out of here. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times what I would do is just like, hey, look, I don't know if this is the right class. I'm happy to refund your money. You guys can go elsewhere. But, figuring out, hey, look, this is who's throwing the shit. And if you can't affect, at least in my line, it's like, if I can't affect the person throwing the shit and they're just going to keep clogging up the river, then it's like, just get rid of that person. Mm-hmm. With a team, how do you address that?
So there's a couple of things I want to point out.
Again, I was client oriented. Like if you're actual team oriented, how do you address that?
So this is a little bit of a difference, right? So you're focused on interfacing with, at the end of the day, like a minor who is vastly influenced by their parents.
Squirrely liar. That's what they are. I don't care if they're minors, they're squirrely liars.
Right. But this is you operating within your scope, right? So it's not my scope to like fix this parent-child relationship and understand the shame that's underneath that, and why can't you be honest here and let's have a realignment conversation. And the work that I do with entrepreneurs, they're the end stop, right? So it's not them trying to go then to their parent or their boss like, oh, but like, sorry that I lied, or sorry that I didn't finish my assignment. No, this is your business. So I think this is really the difference between business consulting and leadership coaching. So I hang my hat on the fact that I deliver leadership coaching inside the container of business strategy and business systems. And I'm in the business of transformation. So when I have conversations with leaders, it is my job to uncover their resistance to actually completing the assignment. It might show up as a symptom of they're lying about something, or they're not being fully truthful about the context in which we're trying to find solutions. It is my job as their coach to ask better questions, to uncover using motivational interviewing, using a lot of different strategies to find out what is the resistance there. That's why they're paying me, because we live in the information age. And I wholeheartedly believe that most people know what to do, or they can easily find a solution to the problem that they think is their problem. It's not the information gap. It is the implementation gap. So the gap that I'm trying to build a bridge across is, this is where you want to go. You have everything that you need to get there. Why the hell aren't you doing the work to actually build the bridge? That's where I am very different than most other business coaches, because a very common phrase that you'll hear, I think about like personal trainers, anyone that does any type of coaching, like if you wanted it bad enough, you would do it. That actually completely spits in the face of what we know about psychology, behavior change theory, all of those things, because we have to uncover the resistance of what is it that's getting in the way. The same way that James Clear talks about atomic habits. Yeah, you want to wake up and you want to go work out. Well, do you even have workout clothes in order to go to the gym? Do you go to bed at a regular time so that you can wake up when you say that you want to in order to execute the thing? a traditional business coach or business consultant will just say, well, like, why didn't you wake up? Like, if you wanted it bad enough, you would. And what I found to be true in my own experience, and in also working with all of the different people that I have, is that shame-based motivation really only goes so far. And learning cannot coexist at the same time that there is shame and guilt. And you probably experienced this firsthand with the students that you worked with. If they were shamed into feeling like a total piece of shit, like I'll never achieve this test score, my parents think I'm worthless, blah, 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 how much harder it is to actually connect with them and help them reach their goal versus if you could kind of remove that, kind of the way that I think, like, let's just scrape the icing off of the cake. Let's get that out of the way. And like, let's dive into like you.
Man. Okay. So you have to talk to me more about the implementation gap. I do want to tell you this one thing as you're going through this. One system that I put into place to continue networking and communicating with parents is every single class, I would email every single person individually. I started this off and I'd like write out this email. And then of course I realized, hey, I'm writing the same email to like 6 different parents. Mm-hmm. So, classic, hey, copy and paste the last 80% and then write an introductory paragraph, right? So it's like, okay, Lisa did really, really well today. She had her homework done, boom, boom, boom. And then copy and paste. This is what we went over today. This is what we're doing next week. This is what's for homework. If you have any questions, call me. So I'd have that. Mm-hmm. And then I realized like I should just have a doc with it was a 9-class program, all 9 classes of the 80% saved. So literally I never have to rewrite this thing. It's literally just copy from the Google Doc, put it on, and then give a couple sentences. Mm-hmm. People, like the overwhelmingly positive feedback I got from these emails. Like I had never done anything that got me such direct positive feedback. They're like, these emails are fantastic. I feel so connected. This is so great. Best thing ever. I couldn't get myself to do them to save my life. To save my fucking life. Every week would come by and I'd be like, shit, I gotta write these emails again. I had 80% of them saved. Mm-hmm. All I had to do was sit down, hit that, like I had the emails. I knew what the kid did. It wasn't even that I was reporting bad things, even when students would do well. And so then I was like, all right, I justified. I'm like, do I really have to do them every week? Or can I just do classes like 1 to 3 and classes 4 to 6 and class? So then I started writing like only 3 per program, even though there are 9 classes. Even that, it would end up being like, instead of classes 1 to 3, it would be like classes 1 to 4. And then like somebody, I wouldn't write them an email until class 5. I know what is happening. I'm watching the train wreck of my implementation play out. I know that it is an overwhelmingly positive thing that my clients are reporting they're so happy with. I couldn't get myself to do them. Talk to me about the implementation gap.
If you're able to do this, because maybe it's been a few years and you're maybe removed from that situation, but it sounds like it's still like in your body, right? There's still some energy around it in your body.
I feel it in my core.
Yeah. Okay. When you think about sitting down to just write the first email, like I want you to imagine one of the students that you knew personally, like you maybe felt like a really strong connection to. Sitting down to write that email to that student's parents, you're probably feeling the resistance, right? What are some of the thoughts that are going through your mind right now? We're going to get personal.
It's fine. It's genuinely when I would sit down, if I could get myself to sit down, it would be like my hands are they just don't want to do it. I'm frustrated. Mm-hmm. I am annoyed. Like the kid even did well. Mm-hmm. I'm annoyed that I have to let the parents know. I know it's valuable, but I don't want to do it. So I get really pissed off at myself because like, buck stops with you. You've done a good job. The kid is happy. The parents are going to be happy. You should be happy to do this. And I'm mad at myself for not wanting to do it. And then, God, if you miss a week, now you're behind because my past self really illustrates who I am to my present self. It's like, well, you already fucking lost a week, right? Like once you go off your diet, once you've been eating trash for 5 days, you don't care about eating trash one more day. You're like, oh, I'll start tomorrow. Same thing happens when you're eating clean. I've eaten clean for 5 days. I'm not going to eat trash today because I'm on a good streak, right? And it's just the frustration, anxiety, putting myself down, the whole thing. Like list the myriad of shit talking that I could be doing in my head. I guarantee I was doing that. And it's like, I would grudgingly just bang out this like angry email. It's like, why?
Yes, let's ask that question. Because you're talking in circles around it. Like you're kind of going side to side. This avoidance is because it's uncomfortable.
Right.
So when you feel that resistance and the annoyance, a couple things that you said, the frustration, I should be doing this. I want you to just check that at the door. Like that's a little monster that you're putting in the corner. Like, I know that you're here, little should monster. Like, stay put. One word that you said that kind of felt really strong was annoyance. Why was it annoying to you to have to communicate good information about that student to their parents?
I'll actually tell you why.
Okay.
I'll tell you why. Patrick Lencioni, and I was talking to you before we went on, Patrick Lencioni with the Table Group came up with this character assessment, the widget, right? So you're a wanderer, inventor, discerner, galvanizer, the E, I can't remember and then the T is tenacity. So here's the thing. I am a hyper inventor, okay? Idea guy, hyper inventing. I'm also really good at galvanizing.
Okay.
So I invent and I galvanize. Classically in my careers, I've invented ways to help people. That's my jam. The aspects of my business, like these emails, that fall under the tenacity because there's no invention. I'm not helping the student in this moment, right? I'm not inventing anything. I'm not helping anything. This is a tenacity categorization. I literally just have to sit down and write 42 emails. They're largely the exact same thing. I hate it. It checks none of my fulfillment boxes. And because of that, I think it's something that just ended up wearing on me. And I hated it. If it was a more fundamental aspect of my business, I would not have been able to keep my business going. It was one of those things that was an extra perk, even though it was icing on the cake and everybody loved it. It was probably the most important thing to share value with the actual paying customer, the parents, because it was a tenacity field, because it was something that didn't require helping people and it didn't require actual invention. I wanted nothing to do with it.
So you assigned a value to it that was incongruent with your values.
Exactly.
Is there a possibility in that act that doing those emails could actually be in support of the values that you found important?
So if I value creativity and I value helping, I mean, it would be very difficult to figure out a way to just do 42 emails every single day that are largely the exact same thing. Damn, I don't know. What do you think?
I have my own take on this as a former teacher as well.
Hit me with your take. Hit me with your take.
Is there a possibility here that you sending that email to that student's parents actually did provide support? It fostered connection between the two of them, because the reason those emails are so important comes back to a core human need: to be seen, to be heard, and to feel like we belong, right?
Yeah.
So these parents are investing in their students, in their own children, because they see potential. There's a gap that this student has, and they're asking you to fill that gap. So think about the relational dynamic between parent and child. My mom has to pay for tutoring for me because I'm not doing good enough in this thing, right? And now my tutor is telling my parents just how great I'm doing. And they get to see evidence of my growth, not from me, not from my test score, but from the grind of the work that I'm doing. What sort of conversations might arise out of that? What sort of relationship development might happen in the context of that? And how might that student show up differently the next week, or 4 weeks in, or by week 9, where had they not had that regular interface of positivity, look at all the things I'm doing right, that they missed out on growth opportunities that really happen in their self-concept, in their belief, in their ability to work through challenging things because someone else sees the value of the work that they provide.
Okay, that's definitely an angle. That is an angle I didn't consider. And even when you're talking about, look, you're going to help enrich the relationship and communication for these kids, my head went to a couple students instantly. I was like, oh, that would have been like, yeah, I'm doing them a solid. Like I'm doing them a solid, helping them get more connected with their parent and feel more positively reinforced, or hold them accountable, if somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do.
Would that have been easier for you?
I think that would have. I think it would have been a challenge for me to remind myself, but that's, that's just the way this goes. You have to remember how this functions. And if I could have come back to that core value over and over and really held space for myself to like, look, get out your frustrations. Like, fine, why are you doing this? And almost repeat. It's like, okay, you're doing this to help Connor. You're doing this to help Cade. You're doing this to help Lisa. Like, you like these kids. They're doing right by you. They are coming to class, diligently working. Do them a solid. Do them a solid. I mean, very frequently in education, as I'm sure you know, parents, it's almost never carrots. It's all sticks. It's like stick. Like almost no parents actually give carrots to their kids. And then when they do, people get criticized. They're like, oh, like everyone should get a trophy. It's like, no, not everybody. Like the kid got a B and he's classically had like C's in this math class and he got a B. So like, I'm going to give him a carrot. Like, just relax. They're like, oh, B sucks. Anyway, I don't know why I took on that persona, but like you can imagine the cranky parent. Okay. So talk to me about implementation gap then. Is part of you helping people cure the implementation gap, helping them realign the task or endeavor that they're resistant to with their core values? Or is that just one of the tools?
It's just one of the tools. Yeah. I mean, I got a whole tool belt here. I want to come back to your situation that I think would be great for...
Where were you years ago when I still had this business? Obviously, it's gone now, and I got all this great advice.
But here's the great lesson that you can learn, and anybody that's listening can learn from this, is the acknowledgement about the experience that happens not in the business, but around the business. And this is why I think another thing that I help my clients do is when they're primarily in service-based businesses, we map out the entire client experience. And I love calling it that. It is a client experience. So part of the work that we were able to do here is for you to see the fuller experience that your students were having as you were tutoring them and being able to kind of track that of, yeah, they show up for the classroom and they get tutored, but there's a whole experience that's being impacted by my interface with them that I will never have knowledge of. But yet I can also hold true to my values and why I'm doing, knowing that I'm having impact in these other ways. So I think about entrepreneurs when they're building businesses. Yes, it's about your client experience, but the moment you start hiring people, you become the leader. And guess what people talk about at the end of the day when they're sitting around dinner with their family?
Their boss.
How was work? They're talking about their boss. So you as the leader are the person that they are talking about. So having that awareness of how am I curating this experience for the people that are in my business, and a really great question to consider is, what is it like to be on the receiving end of me? And that's hard for a lot of people to answer. So the implementation gap is understanding, one, like, what is it like to be on the receiving end of me for myself and for other people that I'm interfacing with? And in going through that thought exercise, you can begin to discover maybe where some of your gaps are. Because what I found to be true, and I, happily debate with someone on this, is the way that you treat other people is a direct reflection of the way that you treat yourself. So if you find yourself hypercritical, man, I would hate to be inside your brain and to hear what you're saying about yourself. If you're complaining about how ineffective and inefficient other people are, and God, why can't they just do the thing that I asked them to do? what are you saying to yourself? And if you find yourself, really burning through employees, or, your client retention is shit, maybe it's because you're not recognizing what it's like to be on the receiving end of you, to know what that experience is like. So when we go through this process of saying, when I sit down with a business owner, like, okay, here's where you are and here's where you want to go, one of the first things that I have to ask them is, who do you need to be on the other side of this? Let's say we're trying to traverse the Grand Canyon, because that's how entrepreneurs are so aspirational. Like, I sell a $27 product and I'm going to make $5 million this year. Okay, great. Awesome. You're making $250 a month.
How did you come up with the $27 and $5 million? Is this a common thing?
No,
you're making $200 a month.
Yes,
You're not even selling 10 a month. Where are you getting your?
It's one of my favorite things about entrepreneurs in general is just how aspirational we are. Sure. Like, I'm going to take over the world, or I'm going to do this big thing. But one, we have to get really clear. I'm not for like bursting people's bubbles, but I'm also for
your baby's ugly. Your baby's ugly.
But I'm also for creating, like, one, I don't want you to be disillusioned in what you need to accomplish. Meaning, if you truly believe we can figure out the pathway to go from a $27 program making $5 million a year. For sure, there's a pathway there. But the better question is, what does it require of you? Who do you have to become in order to make that happen? And for many people, those aspirational ideas of what they want, the cost is too high. So when they're not being well led, when they're not being well coached, they'll get these, like, not necessarily spaghetti ideas, but they'll get these big aspirational ideas, like throwing up on the board. And I have been a culprit of this myself in my own business, of like, I want to do this thing. And then we don't have this realignment back to our values conversation that we were having. We don't have this realignment of like, is it worth it to me? Like, the woman that has to be that person that's having that kind of business, is it worth it to me? Do I know what's required of that? Sometimes the answer is no. Okay, cool. Then let's re-envision your goals, and let's make them value-based goals, as opposed to like, oh, well, everyone's talking about like having a 6-figure business, or, whatever. I mean, that's kind of like in the online digital service-based business.
If you can make 6 figures off Instagram, you are a wizard.
I'm selling my digital product.
$27.
And like, I don't want to downplay that, because, people legitimately are building businesses. We live in an amazing time right now where it's so easy to start a business. And I truly believe that becoming an entrepreneur can be a path to freedom that will change the trajectory of not just your future, but like your family's future, right?
Yeah.
But let's also do so intentionally. Let's do it based off of our values and the life that we want to create, the legacy we want to create, the person I want to be proud of when I'm laying in bed at night and it's just me and my thoughts, to know like, I'm doing good.
Man, there's so much here. Talk about, let me tell you, my experience on the receiving end, there's so much good stuff here. I feel like unintentionally, my old tutoring business has kind of hijacked this conversation. Now, it's not terrible, because I think there are a lot of people on the lower count of employees or service people in entrepreneurial, experiences. But talk to me about the persona where the person started a business successfully. They had a good product. They had systems that were sufficient enough to grow that to a certain level. But say they've gotten to like 15 or 20 employees or 30 employees, and now they realize, one, they're kind of estranged from what they were doing initially. And they also are stuck because they can't grow because they don't have the right systems in place, but they also can't shrink because they don't want to go backwards, right? What is that a persona that you see frequently? Because there are, like you're saying, there are all kinds of ways that you can build businesses now, which is wonderful. And getting up to that like 10 and 20 person mark seems to be kind of an inherent barrier that a lot of people run into. Because if you go from 20 to 100, you go 100 to 1,000, right? Like, you got that. But going from like 10 to 20 range to actually jumping to the 100, that's where it's like, okay, you're no longer just handshaking with people. Like you have, all kinds of different things that you have to really pay attention to. That's not, and they're not the same as when you started the business.
Yes.
Right? Like, is that a persona type that you work with frequently?
Yeah. And I would say it starts to get really sticky for some people around 5, 6, 7 employees because we have span of control, right? So once you get upwards of 5, 6, 7, you very quickly experience your own leadership gap. Like, I don't know how to then effectively manage and lead a team this big. And so you have to put middle players in spots in order to actually be the effective leaders of the team. And then your job is to go above that. And the challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs that have grown their business and it's starting to scale is they still want to be like in the weeds doing the stuff that they feel like is their quote unquote zone of genius. Oh, I'm just such a good like service provider and I want to have eyes on those things. It's really being able to step out of that and have the right vision and the right systems and the right accountability in place for mid-level leaders who are leading your team. And it's your job to be the leader of those leaders. The problem with that is when you have great leaders that are high functioning and they're really good at their leadership role, they don't tolerate bullshit, meaning that if you are not elevating yourself, if you're not able to hold them accountable in a supportive and effective way, they're going to go. They're not going to stick around. So there's this concept of the lid, right? Your leadership lid, that if your lid is too low, the people around you, they will continue to butt up against that. And if you're not elevating your lid, they will find somewhere else where they can excel. And I think that happens at every level of leadership. But really with these teams now, you've got arms of your business that are functioning independent of you. Having the right people in those places and having a very clear charge of what is it that you're in charge of, what is it that you're accountable for, and what freedom do you have in that space to exercise your expertise? Because that's why you hire them. You hire them because they're really good at that area. That is kind of their zone of genius, and you just need to get out of their way. So good leadership at that level, when you now have a team of, let's say, 10, 12, 15 people, you've got a couple, I hate the term mid-level manager because I think it has such a office-y association, but you've got that mid-level leader who is very involved, very supportive of their team, and they're now looking to you to help them be the effective leader. So sometimes what happens is people will promote up through the ranks. For example, like let's say you hire someone like, hey, you're going to be my content manager. And then as your business grows, like, oh, maybe like you're the director of content, let's give you a cool title. And then you can be in charge of other content managers. Sometimes one of the biggest challenges I see entrepreneurs face is they mistake specialized skill for leadership skill. And so the best thing to do is to really get an evaluation of your people and ask the questions like, hey, talk me through how you're holding people accountable. What goals do you have for them? And if we don't know how to do that ourselves, we actually can't lead other people. So we see some big gaps in leadership skills going from that smaller team to that bigger team. So some big things that come up is accountability conversations, right? Because most people are like, oh, I don't want to have a talk with the boss. When conflict comes up, because conflict is one of those things that's inevitable, is like taxes and death, right? Conflict exists everywhere.
Taxes and death.
Conflict.
God bless it.
God bless it, yes. But conflict is also like where creativity comes out. So understanding that conflict doesn't have to have this negative association with it.
And it doesn't have to end at negative, right?
No.
Like you're saying, it's like, okay, look, you want A, I want B. let's dive deeper into why we want these things. Like, do we want them just because we want them, or do we want them to affect some end? And is there a way that we can both get our ends without A or B if they're mutually exclusive? Let's dig down and find a creative niche so we're both served.
Yes. Yeah. And there's effective ways to do that. And understanding, again, kind of going back to some of those leadership skills of like, what's it like to be on the receiving end of me? I know myself in conflict, my tendency is to want to win, right? If I feel passionate about something, like I'm going to win this argument, and that is not effective whatsoever. Some people, their natural tendency is to want to minimize, like, oh, you know what? You're right. It's fine. And you get two people that either like a minimizer and a winner, like nothing's coming out of that. Like, I'm going to say this. Okay, fine. Right. It's like tectonic plates. They're just like, well, there's no effective creative solution that comes out of that. So really what happens at this level is one of two things. Either the leader will start flexing hard and over exercising their leadership capacity. They want to like be in the know. That's them trying to control instead of trusting their team. Or they'll start running away. Like, I'm going to run away from my problems. I'm going to avoid checking in with my team. And then like they're kind of left on their own. So at this level of like 10 to 15 to 20, it's being very intentional with that level that's below you and empowering them to then empower the doers that are in your business. And a lot of that is not like, it has nothing to do with why you started the business. It has nothing to do with the skills that you leveraged when you were starting the business, and everything to do with leadership. And that's usually the time that an entrepreneur is like, oh shit, I don't know what I'm doing. Their profits are tanking. Their people are leaving. Their clients are sticking around. Quality control is going out the window. Like, I'm bleeding here. There's an example. So knowing different people in the business coaching space, someone shared an example with me that he's like, yeah, so I was working with this executive, and, you know, he hired this chief marketing officer. And it turns out like their marketing was shit. Like, they were losing $6 million a year because of their marketing. And his solution as a business coach was like, well, fire your marketing person. Well, we can't because, you know, we felt pressure to hire this specific person for these different reasons. And, you know, so I don't know if we can hire them. Like, so did you ask the actual question that needed to be asked? Do you know how to hire a qualified candidate? Or you just pick someone off of paper that filled a gap for what you were feeling pressure to fill a gap for. And that is, I think, going upstream. That is an upstream issue that all entrepreneurs need to get really good at, is how do you hire and evaluate someone's confidence and competency in relation to the skill and the task and the goal that you need them to accomplish.
Man, that is wild. Yeah, you're speaking my language. I'm working with breaking actually ties with a company right now where the leadership is so atrocious, right? And you just can't, nobody at any level of the company really understands what's going on. The person at the top, when the employees try to get a hold of the person at the top, he either can't or won't respond in a timely or effective manner. So then shit's flying all over the place with the clients who need answers, and then the team player who's like, look, I'm trying to, they don't want to get mad at the client, then they can't get a hold of the boss. I mean, exactly what you're saying. Like the clients are starting to leave, the profits are tanking, and it's like, oh, you gotta, I mean, that ship is going down. Like you can't be associated with that at all. But it's again not what people started their businesses for. They started for a certain set of values and competency and skill sets, and then they find themselves growing far past, or not even necessarily past their ultimate skill sets, but they've grown away from them, right? They've grown or likely grown away from their values or something. And at this point, it's like, oh, I can't manage all these people. I can't do these things. I don't even know what I'm doing. As you're saying, I mean, I think the number of times entrepreneurs say that is like, if they had $1, they would never go out of business. Right?
Well, and I really genuinely think that when we go into business, like, oh, I love connecting with students. I love supporting them. And I love coming up with creative ideas. I'm going to start a tutoring business. So you jump into the deep end of the entrepreneurial pool, and pretty quickly you're like, well, shit, I didn't realize, like, okay, I got to learn the skill like of paying attention to like a P&L sheet. I need to know how to like manage my business finances. That's a skill set that I didn't know that I had to have. Oh, and I got to learn marketing. That's a skill I didn't know that I had to have in sales, and now social media and, you know, maybe video editing, all of these things. When you're just jumping into the pool, there are a lot of universal skills that we just don't know that we need until we're literally like barely keeping our head above water. And once in order to get actually to where we're not just treading water, but we're actually swimming and then like skiing, like this is good. Leadership is one of those skills that nobody knows they need until they're face to face with the fact that they don't fucking have it.
God, that's so painful. But that's why you exist as the coach.
100%. 100%.
Right? Because if we knew what we needed to know, we would already be done with whatever the task is. We wouldn't be hitting a roadblock.
Yes, and at the end of the day, I'm not telling people anything new, right? You didn't want to send those emails. You knew you needed to send them.
You had to bring up the emails again. God, it's so painful.
Right?
Yeah, and
my job is just uncovering why. Why is this so painful for you? Why do you have so much resistance to this? And also asking the question, like, okay, once we flesh this out, if at the end you still feel like it's the biggest waste of time and you have a lot of frustration, guess what? You're the damn boss and you can decide not to do it. You have control here. Right. But don't say that you're going to do this thing and you know that it's important for your business and then not do it and not even bother to uncover why.
Right. I always had this thing when I started making content years ago. It was, I made ridiculous math videos. Like I put Snapchat filters on my face and I'd like be screaming into the camera about this geometry problem. It was great. Like parents would watch me. They're like, this guy's not like, it's good, but it's crazy. Like I was, and my whole point was that like, look, you don't need a math teacher. Your math book tells you everything you need to know. Like most math teachers regurgitate the lesson that's in the math book. You need a guide. You need somebody to help navigate. You need somebody to bounce ideas off of. And everyone, the example I would always bring up is Khan Academy. It's like everybody knows that Khan Academy will teach you anything you want to know in math, but it is so damn painful. Most students can't get more than 2 or 3 minutes into it. Whereas the content I was making, people would spend hours, going through it and they'd love it. And they're like, this is really great. It's literally like just talking to you. I'm like, I know. It took me like 6 months to make like the entire program where there's 700 videos and I'm like being ridiculous and having a good time and having a conversation.
Yes.
With the student. They felt like they were having an intimate, ridiculous exchange with me, even though I was alone in the room talking to the camera. Like that was the thing. But again, if everybody knew, everyone knows that eating chicken breast and broccoli will make them lose weight, but that doesn't mean that everybody's walking around at their optimal weight.
Right. Yeah. There's so many barriers to change, which is kind of a unique skill set that I bring into this. So I shared that I was an elementary teacher for a handful of years, learned a lot. And even
Hopefully
though
the kids did too.
No, I'm kidding. They learned so much.
So much.
I was their favorite teacher. Beyond that, I had lost myself to motherhood and to teaching because in both roles, I felt very much like a martyr to my classroom and to my family. And I couldn't ever carve out this place for myself. This is kind of a backstory that I'm leading somewhere. My way out of that, my way of coming back to myself was through the world of fitness and nutrition. So I ended up going back to school, got a graduate degree in exercise science and nutrition. And I thought I wanted to be a nutrition coach because I was able to take real life application as a mom of 3 kids. I had been a bodybuilding competitor. And the biggest gap that I saw was like, oh yeah, everybody tells you to eat chicken breast and broccoli, but like, how does that apply to real fucking life? Like when I've got 3 kids to feed and a husband and I like, sorry, this is unrealistic for me. So I started the conversations around nutrition through the lens of behavior change. And because of that work that I did for a decade, understanding that type of approach to coaching as I was also building a corporate business or a corporate career in leadership and learning development, I think that's a unique edge that I really bring to the way that I work with my clients, is because I'm not afraid to ask the change questions, because I understand how hard it really is. Where, kind of going back to our previous conversation of like other coaches or even consultants that'll just tell you what to do and say, okay, let me know how it goes. If it doesn't go well, like, what the hell do you do with that? Like, why am I paying you if you're not going to help me figure out why this isn't going well? You're just going to tell me, well, like, eat the damn chicken, steam the damn broccoli, and choke it down. Okay, that'll only last so long. And what most people miss, this goes to fitness, wellness, health, and especially entrepreneurship. The people that are most successful are actually enjoying the process. So being able to uncover what actually works for you in the context of your business, in the context of your life, that makes the doing, that makes the grind enjoyable. Like, you're going to be successful. Liz Gilbert talks about this in her book, Big Magic. She refers to them as shit sandwiches. Like, every job, every role, everything that you ever do in your life will have some shit sandwiches that come along with it. And the beautiful thing to do is to find the work that you get to do that you don't mind eating the shit sandwiches. They're actually enjoyable because of all the other things that come with it. And helping people understand, like, sometimes this is just a shit sandwich that you want to eat, but you've built a really sturdy business with great systems and incredible leadership, that eating those shit sandwiches is like, yeah, that's okay. I don't mind it.
Man, I literally told somebody this morning, like at jiu-jitsu, it's like, my goal as a competitor is to offer 2 shit sandwiches to somebody, right? Like, my whole point is not to force them to do anything, but to allow them to pick the shit sandwich you want to eat. And it all comes down to me placing myself in the right position, doing the right thing. So they're only left with 2 bad, shitty options. And it's like, get eating. You got to pick one. You got to go left or you got to go right. Those are the only 2 places. That's how, for me, at least in jiu-jitsu, that's how I conceptualize things. You're not going to force anyone to do anything. I'm not that big. I'm like 190 pounds. I train with guys that are like 250 pounds, right? I'm not going to force them to do anything. But I move myself in position just right. So it's like, shit sandwich 1 and shit sandwich 2. Which do you want, baby?
And your intent in doing that is to facilitate their growth, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's not ego, right? It's not for you to flex and say, look, I've given you shit sandwiches. Like, no, I know the path for your growth is to actually go through. Right. So here are your sandwiches. Which one do you want to eat today? Right.
And by the way, let me help you see how you arrived here. I didn't, and again, it's not you. Like, I'm just saying, look, this is what I did. I moved from here to here to here. And then these were the only 2 things you could do. And the 3 steps where I moved, I wasn't forcing you to do anything. I just moved myself, and then we arrived here. Because a lot of times, I think in business growth and specifically in jiu-jitsu, people come to it thinking like, I'm going to force people to do these things. I'm going to, through force of will, I'm going to get them to behave the way I want them to behave. And as you get better and better at jiu-jitsu, one of my mentors and, multi-time, it's like 13-time world champion friend, was talking in a seminar recently. He said, look, real jiu-jitsu doesn't actually start until somebody's been a black belt for years. And they realize that it's a game of options and just presenting options. You can't force the person. You can't require them to do things. That's why some of the most exciting fights and competitions are at the lower belts, because people are forcing each other to do things. So you see this like clash of wills, when in reality, the very skilled person just presents options. And as somebody selects from the options available, they then take advantage of the situation. It's like, look, I gave you 3 sandwiches. You picked A, and we're just going to go with A now. And this is where A lands. And it's a tricky thing. And again,
that's good.
Yeah. In business, I've seen a lot of people try to force the issue. It's like, you're dealing with a bunch of teenagers at a yogurt, self-serve yogurt place. Like, you're going to have to assert some will on the teenagers, but that's dealing with squirrely teenagers that are lying about their homework, right? like, if once you start dealing with actual adults and actual professionals, it's like, look, you're not you got to be above this. Like, you can't be forcing people, and you have to, again, as you're saying, shit sandwiches do present themselves, but you need to have compelling reasons why you keep coming back and you keep engaging in the work and you keep willingly saying like, hey, I don't love this aspect. I don't love the emails, but like, look at all the good things these emails allow me to do. Right?
Totally.
And go from there.
And one, I love the correlation between business and jujitsu. I don't do jujitsu. My husband does jujitsu on me sometimes. I'm like,
get off me.
I'm claustrophobic.
Yeah.
But the correlation between that and business is so strong in that it's the subtleties that unless you know what to look for, you don't see it.
Right.
And that's what good leadership is. That's also what good coaching is. And I think about, if anybody has ever played sports growing up, thinking about the best coach that they ever had. I'll use myself. I played soccer growing up and I was a dancer. That's not great coaching there. Soccer, I think about, a great coach will come alongside a player and see the skill gaps that they have, right? They're not yelling at them from the sidelines, right? That's not their favorite coach. That's not the best coach that had the most impact on them, or shaming them of like, oh, you missed that kick or blah, 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 like just real aggression. The best coaches are the ones that are able to come alongside, and you use that term guide. And that's exactly what it is. Like, hey, I see that you kind of backed off when you were pressing on that, defender. What's going on there? And being able to uncover, it's so much more mindset than it is anything else. And even the person, let's use that example that you talked about, even the person that has a yogurt shop that mostly employs teenagers, right? Like, you chose the shit sandwich of owning a yogurt shop that would employ mostly teenagers. What is your skill opportunity there? How do you build trust with teenagers? So not only do they want to show up on time for you, they feel bought into this company. They're going to deliver on the expectations that you ask of them, or you can continue to be the douchebag manager that doesn't trust teenagers, that has low expectations of them, and then you become the self-fulfilling prophecy of why you can't keep anyone, and now your yogurt shop is always like in disarray and nobody cleans up and shit's everywhere and people are stealing. Like, you created that. So I think in any context, there's an opportunity to ask of like, what is the skill opportunity here for me to present A, B, C for myself as the leader, but also the people that I'm in charge of.
Lisa, I feel like we could talk like 12 podcasts on this. Listen, I've had you on the mic for a long time here. We're going to have to come back for round 2.
Okay.
This has been beautiful. How can people find you? You're a leadership coach. How can people find you?
Number one, my website, lisadesilet.com. It's LISADESILET.com.
I'll put it in the description.
Yes. And then Instagram is where I like to hang out. So I'm just at Lisa Desilet. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in. Thank you for dropping some wisdom on us. I wish I knew you back when I had my tutoring business. Maybe it would have been.
You know me now.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm not firing up the tutoring business again. I'll tell you that much. But thank you for taking the time and coming in. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. I so appreciate you. And I really hope people start taking advantage more of your coaching skills.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
This podcast is brought to you by mtustudios.com. If you are looking to start a podcast or make content for any level of your business, MTU Studios can help. Just reach out to us today and we can start shooting tomorrow.